Hello and welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. I'm glad you're here. I get asked from time to time, how do I get my concepts? Where do my ideas come from? What's the process of creating illustrations? And so I'm just going to share this with you. It is very important that after you learn to draw and you've been practicing, that you do something with it. You want to tell a story. Some people like to draw just for themselves. Some people like to draw to maybe explain a thought or an idea that they've got. Some people like to illustrate their own stories. Whatever it is, it's very personal and it's up to you. Today, I'd just like to take a few minutes and go through some of my processes with you and see if I can't help you along the way with some of the things that you'd like to do. First thing you need is some good reference. One of the first things that you have to have a little bit of a vision. You have to have an idea of where you want to go with it. So a little thumbnail sketch would be a good thing to do. One thing that you need to understand is that sometimes what is going on up in your head isn't going to make a great picture. And so understanding the rules of good composition, good creativity, those are very, very important. One of the best people that I know of that does really good composition is Norman Rockwell. And so I've really studied some of Norman Rockwell things. And even though my style isn't really very similar to Rockwell, his composition and his way of telling his story, his narrative, is very, very good. In this little tutorial, I'm going over using tempera paint or gouache on black paper or dark paper, dartboard for contrast. So contrast is very, very important, especially when you're doing something like chiaroscuro. One thing that you do want to do is get yourself some good scrap. Sometimes you can just pull it off the internet. Sometimes I like to take pictures. Good scrap, though, is very, very essential, especially when you're beginning and you don't take things right out of your head. But be careful with that because you don't want to copy something verbatim. I love this picture. I don't know who took it, but it's a wonderful picture. The only thing I'm not real thrilled about is the lid is a perfect circle. And you have all these ellipses that are going on with all these pots and things. And then all of a sudden you have this perfect circle. And so your eye is kind of drawn to that. So what I did is I had a student of mine hold up a little pot by the knob, and I used her hand as a reference. So then you start out with a little sketch. You sketch it out however you wanted to. It wasn't until after I'd done the sketch that I looked at the circle there from the pot lid and said, I want an ellipse. And so I had to twist her arm a little bit. But this is all done with white charcoal. White charcoal is easily erased, easily changed. And then after you go through your white charcoal, I just take this white gouache. And I use, this is called Biggie Cake Tempera. It's done by a company called Alpha Color. It's getting harder to find. It's interesting how art materials tend to change over the years. And I get something that I really like, and then all of a sudden it's taken off the market, and I'm quite disappointed. So I have to find something else. But you just kind of go over this. You can thin it out. You can make it a little lighter or a little more opaque, a little more translucent. But you can see I painted pretty much the whole surface with this white gouache. And then, and there's the new hand right there. But the backgrounds, I really don't worry too much about the backgrounds. They're something that you can add a little bit later. Sometimes you want to add those first. But there's not a lot of contrast, not a lot of detail in the background. So I kind of hold off on some of those. Sometimes I also haven't really decided what I want to do until I'm pretty well done with the piece. Then you choose your colors, and you kind of want to start with a limited palette. Now, this is kind of the way I do my painting, my oil paints as well. Start out with a kind of a limited palette, and I do an underpainting. If it's on white, it's with burnt umber, and maybe I'll do another one of these little things here if it's well received. But this is just done with Prismacolors, and here are the colors that I chose. I always start out with cream, poppy red, yellow, ochre. Those tend to be some very good flesh tones. I start out with poppy red. Sometimes I'll use terracotta in there because it's kind of a red-brown. And then you just layer in your colors. I like layering them in kind of slowly because then they start to mix as well. And I like to use a lot of cream in my highlights. It's kind of a light yellow, and it tends to blend things together as well as give it a nice tone, a nice soft tone. I also like to do a lot of cool colors in my shadows and warm colors in the light. Sunlight is very warm unless it's reflected, and then reflected light tends to get a little more cool. So I'll do a lot of purples and blues in the shadows, and yellows and reds and oranges in the light. And here you have to understand that value is more important really than color. Color, you can use all sorts of crazy colors and make it, more impressionistic if you want. But the values, the lightness and darkness that you get out of there, is what creates your form. It's what helps with the depth, and so that's really essential. You can't lose those values that you're adding in color. I rarely use black. That is one thing that I don't know, for one thing or another, I just don't use a lot of black, and if I do, it's always covered with indigo blue or a dark purple or something, so that it's not just black. Black sometimes tends to look like a hole in the canvas, and so I kind of abandoned black a little bit. In any case, and the camera, every time I took this picture, the camera was a little different. I don't know if it's the time of the day or the lighting or whatever it is, but the camera just doesn't, I haven't had very good luck with cameras. But sometimes as you're coloring, you think, oh man, I got rid of my contrast. I really needed that contrast back. And you can take that cake temper and go back over some of the things and lighten them up a little bit. And it's never permanent. You can always get it wet and wipe it off if you need to. Here I'm starting to work on the background, and I was thinking a log cabin. There's got to be a pantry somewhere. Maybe it's a building off to the side or something, but it's probably wood. And so they would have all sorts of things hanging around, hanging on the walls. So I've got some wrought iron utensils and things hanging around. It's an herb garden. She's drying herbs, and so there's going to be different herbs hanging around that she can use to cook with. And that was my thought there, and so I just started out with finding some different types of herbs that would have been in season, and hanging those around. And again, you can Google those, go online and look up things like that if you're not familiar with them. But this is the end product. I'm calling this Hannah and Her Spice Kitchen, or her spice pantry. I was just intrigued by the fabric and love the ovals, the ellipses that are in there. It kind of leads your eye up into the picture, and then your eye kind of follows her arm up into her head, and that very calm look on her face of, she's done this 100 times, and she knows what she's doing, and it just becomes kind of mundane to her. But to us, it's just a glimpse into this narrative of this life of this person who, in the colonial days, this would have been in the probably mid 18th century, that is trying to make her life better by adding some spice to it, which I think was what really art does. When you're all done, it's good to check yourself. Take your picture, take a picture of your picture, and then take out any saturation, take out any color out of it, and look at it. How does that compare to your original photographs, or to the original thing that you're working from? Are the values correct? You have your lights and your darks and your reflected lights and things, and does it work? If it works as a black and white, it's going to work with color. And the color, again, is like frosting on a cake, it just adds to it. So, but that's about it. There are lots and lots of different things that you can do with this. These are some that I've done in the past with the same technique. Sometimes I add a lot of white, sometimes I don't add as much. Thank you so much for being here and listening to my rantings and ravings. Hopefully that's helped you a little bit, and just try it. Again, I'm using alpha color, Biggie cakes, but I imagine you can use any kind of opaque water paint. I have tried a lot of different ones. I do avoid acrylics and oils with this because, number one, oils take so long to dry, and I'm not sure that the surface is going to be conducive to the Prismacolor on top, as well as the acrylics. I think would be too slick for the Prismacolors to attach themselves. And sometimes it's good to take a little bit of water and pull off some of it because you put too much down to begin with. Anyway, it's very versatile. Try it, see if you like it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll put up some more of these if you like them. Remember, art makes life better.